Nations Capital Development Fund, we have a program called Leaving No One Behind in the Digital Era. What the program is about really is a recognition of what digital transformation is doing for countries, for people, for businesses. But we take a step back and say, as digital transformation brings all the dividends that it can bring to an economy, what about those that might not be copying or might not be accessing digital services like the rest? Digital transformation does two things. It accelerates the rate at which countries can grow by the various things it's able to enable, but it also accelerates the divide between those who are able to use digital services and those that can't. Now, that recognition of what digital transformation can bring, but also can cause as a risk, is what got us to think about how can we develop a policy tool that governments can use to track the growth of the digital economy, but also to track the inclusivity of that, meaning tracking how quick or how slow the digital economy is evolving, and not just at national level, but also for those segments of the population that might be left behind. So the tool is called the Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard. It's a scorecard that helps governments and counterparts, one, to measure and track the growth of the digital economy, like I said, but number two, to identify the key constraints that are hindering the growth of the digital economy, and number three, to help in taking corrective measures or in decision-making on how to overcome those obstacles. So in Uganda, we've been working with the Ministry of ICT to implement this tool, which for the ministry would be really inward-looking and saying, where do we stand on aspects like policy, on aspects like infrastructure, on aspects like innovation and skills. And on each of those, we assess how far the country is, but specifically also look at key segments like the youth, like women, like SMEs, like refugees and migrants, and the elderly. Why this? Because we've realized that these are the segments that in most cases do not cope with the rest of the population. So one of the key things the scorecard looks at is how conducive are the policies and regulations with regard to the growth of digital services. And I'll give you an example. You could think of digital services in the financial sector, so digital financial services. To what level is policy and regulation conducive for people to develop and take to market digital financial services? You can look at it also from other sectors of the economy. So the private sector should really be happy that government has chosen to track, measure, and follow scientific evidence on what might be the key constraints in the growth of the digital economy in Uganda. And with that, take corrective measures which will trickle down to how people do business in digital services. As you'll see from the various scores, it's a mixed picture. You have aspects like policy and regulation. Policies and regulations are there and very adequate to be able to drive growth of the digital economy. Aspects of implementation of the policies and regulation have areas for improvement. There are aspects like affordability, so the pricing of not just the services themselves, but also affordability of the devices and how the services are priced based on the inputs into the digital services like data. Those contribute to the usage. And as you know, usage contributes to the scale, and the scale brings down pricing. So there are a couple of those aspects. The aspects of skills of innovators. As you know, one of the drivers of uptake for digital services is the relevance of the service being offered. If the service being offered is not very relevant to you, you might not use it. And what that requires is that the innovation community, the community of innovators, is skilled enough to be able to come up with relevant services for specific market segments. Now, the aspect of skills, I think, came out as one that could be improved. I would also say aspects of incentives for innovators to be able to indeed do their job of coming up with new services that are relevant to various segments of the community. One thing that I can say, I think, is a sector that is very known to most of us here, that has really leveraged digital technologies quite well, is the financial services sector. You and I can appreciate what we are able to do today online or on our phones to access financial services. So if you were to project that to other sectors, health, education, agriculture, and think of what might be possible if these sectors would also lend themselves to deep digital transformation. And that will take not just the policies and the infrastructure, but actually the right services customized for those needs of the people. And that's where innovation comes in. Of course, the skills are also seen to be a challenge. And the skills here, I'm talking of things like digital literacy. To what level is the population, and here I'm talking of the average Ugandan, digitally literate, for them to be able to use digital services beyond maybe communication, okay? But also financial literacy. Financial literacy is key because the use of, say, digital payments and leveraging other types of digital financial services also based on the financial literacy of the users. How do we work to not leave some segments of the population behind? And there are a couple of things, but one of them is actually recognizing that some people are being left behind. So the tools like these that actually show us the level of divide between the rest of the country and some specific segments is one way to look at it. And what the scorecard does very well is show us to what level are they behind, but what factors are contributing to that divide. So measuring that and recognizing it is one of the big steps in finding the solutions to that. But maybe to get a bit more technical about what needs to happen, and it's one thing that at UNCDF we try to do together with government, private sector, and other development partners is, I would say, one of the key things is relevance, okay? If you look at what you do on your phone today, if that's all that is available, then how relevant is it to the person in rural Uganda, okay? It's looking at the lifestyle of the person in rural Uganda and say, what can the phone enable them to do better? Then will come aspects of, is it affordable, is it easy for them to use, and all those can be worked upon with the innovators. So innovation is very key in here to bring about the relevant services, products and services. Number two is the affordability of these products and services. And affordability is key because, like you mentioned, it might not be lucrative for private sector to go into some of these areas. So it might take some time for certain services to trickle down to rural areas. UNCDF has a couple of projects with various private sector partners, incentivizing them to develop solutions for rural people. And through that, as you nudge the private sector providers to serve these markets, actually they get to realize that there is some market for them to serve them. So maybe one thing to add is that is to recognize that Uganda is one of the 25 countries that have been at the forefront of adopting this tool and using it as a policy tool that will drive the tracking, measurement, but also decision-making around growing an inclusive digital economy. So we commend the effort through the ministry to actually uptake of such a tool that is a scientific way of assessing, tracking, and recognizing the challenges or the obstacles that need to be levied for the digital transformation of the country.